I on? I think I'm on. Alright. Cool, so how's everyone going? Today I'm going to be talking about a few different things. I'm going to be talking about classes. What specifically classes you might want to actually play in the game. And a little bit more detail about getting started in the game. So, I guess the best place to start would be to talk about skills. I'm probably going to turn down this music. Let me turn down this music. I like the music, but it's a bit too much sometimes. Okay. So, these skills, which I'm going to talk about, they're pretty important in the game. A lot of games you see, like Dark Souls and all that, yeah, they have skills, and sometimes they're not so useful, and sometimes they're pretty useful. And most games, most RPGs, make it so that these skills here are the ones that are the most important, and they're probably still the most important here. But then when they usually get to like these sort of minor skills, not that they don't get important at all. That is where it is completely wrong. In this game, some of these skills can be your entire focus around your character, if you want it to be. So I'm just going to quickly go through them right now. Balance is critical for pretty much every single player. If you're getting into melee combat or something like that, even for people who are not getting into melee combat, balance is great, because if you don't have good balance, you can be stuck on the ground for a long time. So it's something worth investing in. Bluffing, not for everyone. There's a fun little hidden mechanic with it, sort of. If you're sneaking whilst you're bluffing, it says it right here, I think, yeah. You can draw a person towards you if you succeed on the bluff. So that means you can play really slowly and you can draw the enemy out of where they are and slowly weaken them. It's a pretty cool skill. Otherwise, it just makes it so that you can sneak attack characters, which is useful for some. Diplomacy. Diplomacy is pretty good for some characters, not for everyone. Healers can use it. Some tanks can use it as well if they want to like get rid of the aggro for a second. Aggro is like all the characters, all the enemies are trying to hit them. So if you have aggro, you have everyone trying to hit you. If you don't have aggro, you don't have anyone trying to hit you. Disable device is a critical one. The reason why I chose Rogue is because they have the most options of skills at the start, and they have a lot of skill points as well. So they're one of the characters who focus a lot of their interactions through skills. Yeah, disable device is pretty critical. It's even more critical if you're going for a trap rogue build. Haggle, not so useful. Useful for buying and selling with vendors and all that, but otherwise, nothing really. Yeah. Let's see. Hide. Hide is critical if you're trying to stealth past people. Let me just turn off Discord for a second. Right. Hide is critical if you're trying to sneak and all that. You pretty much need it. It's a fun skill to have. Intimidate is good if you're trying to be that person who's getting all the aggro. There's also some other abilities in the game which work off of Intimidate. I can't remember them right now. Jump. Jump is fairly critical. Some people swear by it, that you need like a certain amount of jump to actually be able to do things in the game. So, my apologies. So most people in the game try to get a little bit of jump. I never really heard of anyone not getting any jump. At least some point, you know, you can get items that boost these skills later on, so it's not something critical for now. But it's something that's quite useful to be able to jump higher. Listen gives you certain prompts throughout the game, so if you're walking along, your character might listen to something and then you can act based on that. You can also see enemies when they're coming towards you, when they're sneaking. Move silently is just pretty obvious. Opening lock, again a rogue skill, and quite useful. Other characters have ways of opening locks though, so half-orcs can bash it open with their heads. I don't know how, but they can. And wizards can magically open a lock, as well as some other spellcasters can do the same. Repair is pretty critical if you're having a warforged character, or if you have someone who uses mechanics and all that. And there's a few interesting tidbits about the game in relation to repair, like little skills that change the way that you play the game. It's a fun skill to have. Not everyone has to get it though. Only get it if you're really thinking about it. Search is near critical if you're a rogue or someone who's trying to find things. However, there are other ways of finding things, so like a cleric and a few other sort of divine characters have a thing called true seeing, where they can see anything. And then there's some other characters who can see things in other ways, but it's pretty damn good to have. Spot is like listen, so it gives you prompts in the game. And I believe listen doesn't give you prompts for traps, but Spot does. So Spot can be better in that sense. Spot can also help you see enemies that are trying to hide. So it's quite nice. By the way, you might be like, oh, when am I going to see hiding enemies? In this game, most enemies who are far away from you are hiding. So you can't see them, pretty much. So if you have Spot, you can see the enemies who are coming up. Swim is only useful if you're swimming, but it can be a good one to get because there are some challenges in the game where you need swim. Tumble is probably the funnest skill to grab. Again, it's one of those skills like all the rogue skills up here, that if you don't put a point into it, you don't get anything in it at all. So if you don't have a point in tumble, you just kind of like hop forward. Then there's certain count-offs for tumble, so I think at 20. So if you're 20 or above in tumble, you get to roll, I think. And then if you're 30 above, you get to do like cartwheels and whatnot. Tumble also reduces how much damage you take from falling. Use a magic device, pretty good. Although, in my opinion, it's only really worth pursuing if you're going to try to get it quite high. Yeah, Rogue can get it quite high. What Use Magic Device does is it lets you use objects that you normally wouldn't be able to. You kind of convince the object that you can use it. Concentration is good for spellcasters, and it's good for monks. And for spellcasters, it means that if you get hit when you're trying to cast a spell, you don't lose concentration, and then you don't fail the spell, which is pretty important. Concentration for monks gives you ki, and that means you can use more of your abilities, pretty much. Heal is good if you're trying to heal people, and it's also good if you're trying to hurt people with negative energy. For example, a undead wizard can use this negative energy. Yeah, it's a pretty good spell. It's also got an active, but the active doesn't really come in handy that much, where you can just automatically revive people pretty much if they've fallen down, not if they're dead. Perform is specific for bards. I think there might be some other things that use it. It's a good skill to have for a bard. You don't actually have to get it if you're a bard though, but it's a good one to get. Spellcraft, the last one, is just a general good thing to get for spellcasters. So it boosts how much damage your spells do, how effective they are, and whatnot. Okay, the last thing is you might have noticed this key ability here. So this key ability relates to one of the 6 abilities that are here. So you see here I've got 18 dexterity, which means I've got +4 modifier. If I go down here, it's every second one gives me +1, and you can see this is, so from 10 is 0, 8 is -1, 12 is +1, 14 is +2. This modifier then comes into these skills. See, dexterity, 4, and it goes into a whole bunch of other things as well. So like reflex saves, that +4 goes into that. So it's not a huge thing to worry about. It's just something that you should know exists. Like, these skills help these skills in some way. Okay, so that sort of tells you about skills. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring that up in relation to characters and classes is because each one has different skills that they might want to use. So you'll want to think about those skills I just talked about before in relation to these characters and maybe their playstyle. Alright, so I'm going to give a quick sentence or two for each character. So a fighter is an extremely versatile character who can also specify in a specific way. They can fight in heavy armor or light armor. They can do a whole bunch of things. They're the best at fighting. Barbarian is usually quite straightforward, and they just hit things quite hard. They're quite tanky in terms of how much health they have. They move quite fast, do a lot of area of effect damage, which other characters don't do so much of. Paladin is a very defensive version of the fighter, which is also self-sustaining, so they can heal themselves and use a bunch of deity feats, so they can call upon their god. A monk is a character that is probably one of my favorites. They are similar to a paladin. They have lots of versatility. They don't call upon a deity to do anything, but they call upon elements. So they call upon fire, or lightning, or they use the dark, or the light, or whatnot. And they use combos as well, which is a little bit more complex for a starter. Sorcerers are essentially glass cannons in most senses, but you can also build them a few other ways. And they usually take upon one element or two elements and take them to that extreme. So you might have seen in the other video I had a stone sorcerer. Was also a monk and hit people with their stone and whatnot. So that's kind of what I did. I went an earth way. Cleric as one of the most varied characters in the game. They have a bunch of deities they can pick and a bunch of domains they can pick. They can choose to go any sort of way, any which way. They can heal people, they can damage people, they can stun people, they can do whatever they want, really. But usually they have to specify in something. A wizard is like a sorcerer, although they have generally a larger variety of spells, as it says in the description. Wizards are kind of hard to pin down. Honestly, they do whatever they want to do. They're a wizard. Favorite soul is like a closer version to a fighter than a paladin. So they do generally more damage than a paladin. And their healing, they get a lot of healing, but I believe they don't get quite as strong healing. So they're again sort of a weird character. Do a bit of everything. Rely on their god. Druid uses nature, and they can use the elements similar to a monk, so they can call upon like fire and all that. They can also transform into animals, and yeah, they're quite versatile. There's many different ways to play them. Each one's pretty cool. A warlock is similar to a cleric and whatnot, but they don't have really any healing abilities. So they kind of use all the offensive deity-ish abilities and put themselves more in line with the wizard, so that like crowd controlling people. They're also doing lots of damage and whatnot. Right, last we have the specialists. So ranger, I'd probably say the best description of them is just a scout. So they're good at a whole bunch of different things. They're similar to druids, and they have nature they can use. Yeah. I mean, they're just quite descriptive, self-descriptive. They use those two hands. They're very agile, usually. A rogue, they use crossbows or traps or daggers or things like that. They specialize in a specific way of doing something, and they do it really damn well. And they use all those skills we were talking about before. Bards affect a party or a group positively. They can also enchant enemies. They have a lot more enchanting options than a wizard, say. And they can also be pretty good in melee combat as well. Artificer is essentially a rogue with crossbow mixed with wizard elements. So they're a bit of a jack of all trades. They're pretty cool, they're pretty interesting. And they've also got a pet that they have. Last is the Alchemist, which is one of the newest ones that came out. And they are hard to pin down. They're sort of like a monk for casters. So they have a whole bunch of things they can do. They have combos that they need to pull off to get things to happen. They're quite complex. And yeah, I think they're pretty good in terms of just being a whole bunch of things at once, but you can choose to specify really anything you can do with an alchemist. Okay, so that's all of them. Now, it's really going to come down to you to pick one of these classes and come up with some sort of story behind it or something like that. Just have a bit of fun. But yeah, don't try too hard to worry about, making it so that your character is extremely strong and all that. This game is a lot more about the story that's given to it. Some people like to play for the challenge, and that's fine, but personally, I think especially for your first few runs of the game or so, you want to be playing just having fun, just, going out into a new world and being like, oh my gosh, there's all these things to do. So, my recommendations, I'm going to pick one for each class. Oh damn, it's already hard to recommend. Okay, I'm going to pick a few. Pick a fighter if you're playing with friends and you feel like playing some traditional roles of D&D. So you have someone who does a lot of damage, someone who heals, someone who crowd controls, something like that. Otherwise, for melee, I would pick a barbarian, or if you can get him, probably get a monk. They're quite interesting. Mind you, the monk is quite complex, so this recommendation is not really going well, is it? Let's continue. It's hard to recommend to pin these down. Anyway, these ones here, I would recommend playing a cleric. Clerics are not just the heal bots or whatnot that you think they are. They have a lot of variety in them, like really heaps of variety. Lots of fun, unique decisions you have to make as a cleric. And I think they also have one of the friendliest ways of using spells. So the cleric and the druid, I think, and also the paladin. They all get all their spells each time they level, and you just have to pick them. So you go to the tavern, you pick the ones you want. Whereas things like wizard or sorcerer or something, you get stuck with your decision as soon as you level. So there's not much opportunity for variety. Okay, lastly, ranger is also one of those ones I was talking about with the spells. Here, I don't know what one I would recommend. Perhaps a ranger? Rogues are pretty fun. if you're going for those traditional roles, again, so if you're going to go for those traditional roles, and say you've got 4 friends you're going to play it with, I would pick a Spellcaster, a Cleric, a Fighter, and a Rogue. The reason why I say Rogue, or you can also say Artificer, is Rogues and Artificers are the 2 classes in this game that can disable traps, and traps are pretty important in this game. They're plentiful, and they do a lot of damage. They can kill entire teams in one sitting if someone steps on the wrong plate or something. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to say. All these things are just names, so don't think you have to play in a particular way if you're playing a fighter or something. But also, there's another thing, is that you can multi-class in this game. There are specific requirements, so if you're going to go down the multi-class direction, I might do another video on that to help you clarify it. Multi-classing is, to me, one of the funnest things to do in this game. But yes, multi-classing is there as an option if you're not satisfied with all these sort of options that are right here. But really, to start you off, I would probably recommend, if you're in a group of people and you feel like playing traditional roles, a Fighter, Cleric, a Rogue, and a Spellcaster like a Wizard or a Sorcerer. And then if you're not sort of in that, maybe you're playing by yourself, I would recommend like a Barbarian or a Paladin, a Cleric, and maybe a Rogue or a Ranger. Bards are pretty good too, but they're a bit more complex, I think, in the way that you need to play. It's not so straightforward. Okay. Cool. So, got a bit more time I can talk. I was going to talk about some of the characters I've had before, but I don't think I will. I'll do it another day. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I will see you some other time.